The first thing was I have a British MacBook, but I also have a German keyboard sometimes, and so I have a switch between the German and the British language on my computer. And 2 minutes before the performance started, I didn't realize that I hit the switch. It was a key combination, like Control Space. So my language was German for the keyboard, but this keyboard is British. So when I tried to send some commands, it didn't get the right commands. This was my first mistake with live coding, and it was one of a long list of mistakes. This happened a couple of times to me, so at the end I decided to disable the key command. So now I have to go here and I have to switch from the menu, which is a bit more tedious when I put a German keyboard, but it helps me not to do that in a live coding situation, which is good. Let's do the next one. AV Jam. This was an event in Berlin that I can recommend you everyone to go. It's called AV Jam. It's a very also a very friendly, very nice jam. And I'll show you a short bit from the second one. So that's me playing at AV Jam. What happened there is I call it the Bluetooth headphone disaster. I have a Bluetooth headphone, this one, and some of you just installed Super Collider. And when you run Super Collider and you have a Bluetooth headphone paired to your MacBook, or your other computer. The moment I open this headphone, it makes a connection to my computer. Super Collider recognizes that there is another audio interface.
I have the same problem with Hydra the same problem.
Super Collider also recognizes that the audio rate for the headphone is a different one from the microphone. And what does Super Collider do? It freezes. This happened to me at my second or third live thing. I had this in my pocket, and I didn't see it, and it opened up, and it connected to my computer, and suddenly the music stopped playing, and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Sorry for my English. There is one... So the first recommendation I have whenever you play live, disconnect everything wireless. And I come to that topic in a second. It might seem counterintuitive because live coding actually, if you want to start live coding and if you don't want to do all this installation stuff, it's super, super easy to do. You go to Strudel, that is strudel.titlecycles.org, and you press play. And here you can do live coding. You can change the code. It plays music. It has everything installed because it's running in the browser. So everything is already kind of prepared for you. You don't have to go through all this tedious stuff. And this is super, super, like for the first time you're live coding or even later, I totally recommend to try this. You don't need to install anything. But it is running in your browser and it's running from a server. So you have to have an internet connection. It doesn't work on the train or if your internet is bad or if your browser cache has just emptied. And this is kind of like the trade-off of the thing. So it's super accessible, but on the other hand, if you play in a club or if you play in a situation where you're stressed, you want the thing to work on your computer without having to rely on a spotty internet. So in that situation, yeah, just to say, disable Bluetooth on your computer, or tell Super Collider, there's a setting, tell Super Collider to set the number of microphone channels, input channels, if you don't need microphone, to 0. Then it doesn't have this problem. It doesn't freeze when you connect to your PC.
Is there an offline version for students?
No, it's not. I think it caches it. So if you start playing and then you switch off, it still works because it caches. In browsers nowadays, you can download, like if you go to a website, it downloads stuff and then it's cached and it has WebAssembly running, and it's kind of like it will continue running, but this is kind of very shaky because you don't know when your browser might empty the cache or empty the stuff. So it's not a, I would say, performance grade kind of setup. So I'll talk about my setup a bit later, like the offline setup. But let's continue with the mistakes.
Michael, can I just have a question about,
sure.
About this? The Bluetooth problem, just to see if I understand, because I have it every time that I make Super Collider works. No, I just boot the server, and if you will have like this problems with the sampling of in and outs,
yes,
the server just don't run.
Yes.
It's quitting because then I work it. But as you said, it was already running, and then when it connected with the Bluetooth, it just it automatically identified. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It always uses the newest audio interface you put in,
So
which
automatically to.
Yeah. If you, for example, if I connect this and restart Super Collider, it will take this, which is kind of nice because if you are in a live situation and you plug in your audio interface, then it will work. But it's kind of annoying that you cannot disable it. I've looked at it, but it seems hard-coded deep in Super Collider to disable that annoying thing that it completely freezes when it sees that different audio rates.
Yeah.
But what you can do, and I show you just briefly. I have a plug-in that I have to run to show you that. Because I have different startup files for Super Collider. That's another tip. Maybe if you have Super Collider and you want to have different startup files, there's a plugin, a Quark, that you can switch the startup file. So I have one startup file just for working with Super Collider that loads a minimal amount of stuff, and I have one startup file for tidal cycles, which runs the tidal cycles stuff. The name of the Quark is startup file. Startup file, yeah. And so it has this. If you want to switch these things, you have to take this dialog. And here in my startup file, you see. So this is my learning from the headphone disaster. Let's see if I can make this bigger. And this says s.options.num input bus channels equals 0.
Okay. So
And I made a note and I said, set this to 0 if microphone sample rate does not match headphone sample rate. So here the headphone goes 44 kilohertz stereo and the microphone is 20 mono or 10 mono. So this doesn't match and Super Collider freezes. So if you have a situation like this, you can disable the mic if you don't need it. If you need it, then you have to work around, have a separate mic and so on.
I have always the sample rate window open.
Right.
So I can just like switch it.
Right. Right. Next, all my first performances, I had a phenomenon that if you make digital music, you probably know it, and that phenomenon is clipping. And I'm going to show you what that means. Let's take this set here. So after using Orca with synthesizers, I switched to tidal cycles, which I'm coming to in a second. So you'll see some tidal cycles code. And let's take this bigger. And no, it's a different one. Okay. Okay, let's see. So I started playing on my laptop, and I was listening to my stuff, but yeah, I'm not a trained musician, and so I'm playing stuff like this. See. Might be nice if you're into techno, but if you have a trained ear, you heard that was clipping. And the thing that gives it away is because I found the stuff like too low, so I started using the gain parameter here in tidal cycles, and you have similar parameters in other things as well. Now, if you make a gain of 1.5, it's already clipping. And one thing that I can recommend if you work with Super Collider, first is to find the window, and the second is to run the server meter. So let's do that again. Close a few windows. Server meter. I have two now. Here. Oh, I have this full screen. Second. Oh, here. Yeah, so this is actually yellow, so it's kind of fine. Okay, let's think. Okay, I think the reason why it's not going red is because with Jens Foxdot, I just installed a limiter. What was it called?
Safety net.
Safety net. And safety net already does the stuff. It limits the output of clipping. Now, the problem with that is I didn't know about safety net and other stuff that you can use.
Is like stage limiter, maybe?
It uses stage limiter under the hood, and I discovered stage limiter later, which is a plugin that SafetyNet uses to limit. The problem with stage limiter itself was that if you install stage limiter, it installs itself at the end of the node tree in Super Collider. So if you're using Super Collider, you make sounds, it puts all the synthesizers that it creates and all the samples in a sort of tree. And at the end of the tree, when you start the limiting plugin, it puts it at the end of the tree, but the meter is not at the end of the tree. So the meter will show you red, and the limiter will limit after the meter. But I wanted to see what the limiter does. And to be honest, I didn't really hear it so much. When I use a limiter in Ableton, I can push it and I hear it. Now the clipping goes down. But here I didn't really hear it, so I was not convinced about that stuff. So what I did then is something you shouldn't do. I decided to put the volume in Super Collider at minus 12 dB. For me, that solved all the problem. The clipping went away, at least in the output. Problem solved. No, problem not solved. And this went at my second AV jam. I had this setting. So I had too loud stuff coming from tidal cycles. The thing is, if you have multiple channels and you add the sounds, they will add to the clipping. So you can imagine the waves just add up, and when they have both peaks, then they get really high, and that means clipping. I didn't solve the problem. I solved the problem later in the chain. And also during my second AV jam, with some other problem, I had to restart Super Collider, and I forgot to pull the volume down. And in a live situation, that is something you don't want to. You try to eliminate everything that you have to do manually. Like if you do it at home and you know, oh, I have to set this to that and I have to do this in preparation. In a live situation, your brain is just like, okay, I'm here, like 30 seconds of silence and the people are looking and what do I do? So I forgot to bring it down, and then 1 minute later, the person who ran the mixer, which is a very friendly person, he came to me and he said, you are coming in way too hot, and which means I came in way too loud because I forgot to put this down. My solution then was to put in the Super Collider startup file automatically reducing the dB to minus 12, which was not a good idea because I'm solving the problem too late in the chain. It's already clipping, but then I reduce the volume that's going out. The second thing is because I'm at minus 12, everyone else is at 0. If somebody mixes it with other performances, they have to, my signal comes in very low. And this is something I had in a couple of small workshops we did and small things, that the audio person came to me and said, hey, I don't hear anything. And I'm like, yeah, I have minus 12, so can you pull up your thing? It's not a good idea. Keep it at 0. And what I'm doing right now is, since I had this realization, I'm now bringing down the gain in all my sets. And you can see the blue dots here. The blue dots is where I already, so every set I have to go through and go down with the gain and listen and kind of like, it's like mixing the stuff new. And then I mark it with a blue dot, and then I know it's at 0 dB and it doesn't clip. So that's one thing. I would still recommend to use something like Stage Limiter or something that prevents a very bad accident to happen, because Super Collider is the machine that runs the motor of many of our live coding environments, Tidal Cycles, Foxdot, others. Sonic Pi. But Super Collider does not have safety belts. So you could make a sound. If you blow up a filter or something, it can make a sound that, if somebody has headphones, can damage their hearing. Or if you have a big system, it can blow up the whole room. So it's always good to have this as a safety net, but I wouldn't recommend to use the limiter as a compressor, like to mix your sound. Because if you have, like I said, the clipping happens first and then you bring it down, you should avoid the clipping at the root. So that was my next learning.
Can I make another question, Michael?
Sure.
Because in the beginning you said we're starting from 1.5 gain, and we are already clipping, and that's something that intuitively I started doing, is like to limit everything on one.
Yeah.
Like the sum.
Yeah.
So I just put I use 0.05
Yeah.
to my volume, so I know that the sum doesn't reach 1.
Yeah.
Is that
You can do that. If you put 0.05 in tidal cycles, it will be very low. So then you have to adjust on the you will have to adjust on the output volume of Super Collider for sure. But you can do that. Yeah, I'm starting now. What I'm doing is I'm starting at 1.0 and I'm adding in tidal cycles. You kind of add channels. You add tracks. And then I bring it down and I see when I'm adding tracks, does it go red? And by listening and basically adjusting my stuff.
Thanks.
And then, yeah, I'm kind of, I'm going to mention the next thing, which I call the Hydra option enter killer key combination. I'm going to mention it when I mention the setup. But from all these failings and from all these kind of misfits, I wanted to have a kind of stable environment which I can play live. And I have Super Collider, Tidal Cycles, and Hydra. I'm going to show you Hydra in a second, which is a visual component of this thing. And my goals were it has to work completely offline. So like mentioned, no Wi-Fi, no problem. It should work from my computer. I wanted minimal destruction. This is a personal preference. Many live coders have screens or different windows and stuff like that, and it's all fine. I want to have minimal, I want to have full screen and minimal destruction for my stuff. I need Hydra and Tidal running, so two kinds of code at the same time. And I need the visuals be full screen as well. So the visuals have to go behind the other code screen as well. And it has to work live, and it has to work streaming. And so the solution I found is called Flock. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you in a second how that works. For those people who are new to live coding, just a little insert. What kind of hardware do I need for live coding? And the thing is, you can really live code from old Linux machine. You don't have to have a fancy computer for that. But there are two things that I realized that that are really useful and that you really need. And the first thing was that I discovered all the time that I wasn't actually hearing the music. So the first recommendation is you need a good set of headphones. And this is the only, like as a musician, electronic musician, or I'm not a musician by training, but if you make electronic music, buy a good set of headphones. This is the only investment that you need. You need an old computer and a good set of headphones. I started, like, the first time I had this on and I listened to what I was doing, I heard a different planet. I was completely floored. It was for me like I was deaf, I couldn't hear, and now I hear. And these are like €200 headphones. These are AKG's 371s. These are closed headphones, so I can play live with them. So you can look at DJ headphones and you can look at studio headphones. If you only play at home and you don't mind the sound, like you have a silent environment, you can use open headphones. And if you DJ or play live, you use closed headphones, so there's not so much sound coming in. You don't need Bluetooth. You don't use Bluetooth. Don't noise cancellation, all the stuff. They need to be good, and you need to be comfortable wearing them. So you need to try them on. Like I said, these were €200. You don't need to spend more, but not much less, I would say. And it opens up a whole new universe. You hear music different. They kind of separate the bass and the highs and stuff in a manner that you, wow. So if you hear music only through your speakers and then you put this on, it's like, yeah, it's a revelation.
Is it Bluetooth or wired?
These are wired. I would not recommend wireless headphones for that. Always wired stuff. There is a Bluetooth variant, but I deliberately choose not to buy the Bluetooth variant, but the only wired variant, because I don't want to have any distractions, anti-battery, Bluetooth problems, blah, blah, blah. Just the pure sound coming in. So this is the first recommendation. The second recommendation, at one point when you play live, you will need audio interface. And this is because if you put, or this one here, the red ones, focused right ones, you get them on Kleinanzeigen for 50 bucks or new for 100, 200 bucks as well. But this separates your laptop audio from the audio that's actually going out, and it's useful in many, many ways. It reduces the probability that you hear noise on the way out, especially if you do also visuals with HDMI that often induces noise in the laptop audio. And so this is a iRig Duo. It's very. It also has MIDI, so it works as a MIDI interface and an audio interface. This is a lifesaver, and I recommend that if you, when you play live.
Can you tell me the model? The brand and the model?
That's iRig.
iRig.
iRig Duo, and the brand.
It's okay, iRig.
You'll find it, yeah. Alternative is this, like a small mixer. If you have, for example, if you have small synthesizers that you put, this is like a 5-channel mixer, which also has a USB audio interface. So this would be. I've been using this as well, and there are different models from that.
What is that one?
Is that also with recording possibility?
No,
It's
it
just
has audio in, audio out, so you can also record on your computer then.
Okay.
It's called Just Mixer. It's a cheap brand, but for my stuff it works. And if you're playing in a club, they will have a house mixer. But between the house mixer and your laptop, you should have at least an audio interface, so to decouple that stuff.
Highs and bass.
Right. And a technicality, but I think it's useful because I had a couple of discussions, even with audio people, the cables. So there is a difference between, these things have different connections, and the difference is called balanced and unbalanced. So if you have an unbalanced connection, your cable does only have one black ring, and it's called TS. And this is for putting a microphone or a guitar into your audio interface. From the output of your audio interface to the house mixer, if you play in a venue, you want to have a balanced cable, and people confuse that because it's a stereo cable, but it's mono. So I have 2 mono channels, left and right, and in each of these mono channels I put a stereo cable, which is a balanced cable. So the sound will be mono, but it will be protected on the travel to the house. So this sometimes if you come to a place and you think they have everything, it could be a problem. So make sure that the technical person, you write them an email and say, hey, I have a balanced output, and you have to look at the specification of your audio interface, what it has. So this has unbalanced inputs for guitar, e-guitar. It doesn't have balance, but balanced outputs, and the balanced outputs go then to the speaker or to the house. So balance is very, very. It's if you put a balanced cable in an unbalanced connection, then you will not hear the sound. It will sound. You will only hear like half of the sound or something like that. So be aware that there is a lot to learn, and I can only recommend that to check it out. Hi. Okay, so talking about the setup, I'm gonna show you. Okay. Now I want to show you my setup, and let's pretend I don't have Wi-Fi. Okay, so I'm going to show you. So I showed you the first setup with Orca, like the kind of scheme of the thing. I'm going to show you. I'm first going to show you the scheme of this setup. So this is now my kind of live coding setup. let's look at this. So I still have my MacBook, and on the MacBook, SuperCollider is running. That is the stuff you installed in the first workshop. You need it for a lot of these live coding environments. I have title cycles on top of SuperCollider. And then I have a thing called Flock, and this is the thing that kind of solves my problems for the setup that I wanted to have. I have Hydra for visuals. I'm going to show you all this stuff in a second. And then, since a couple of algorithms, online algorithms ago, I installed Black Hole on the Mac, which is kind of like an audio. It gives you a virtual audio instrument that works very well with OBS. So if you do streaming on a Mac, I recommend to use Black Hole and send the audio to Black Hole. And then you use OBS, use Black Hole as an input, and it will help you to avoid problems with the sound output coming into the stream. So Black Hole has a kind of zero latency. It's super fast, and it helps you when you do streaming. And on the hardware side, I have my iRig Pro Duo, my audio interface, and this goes to any external mixer or PA, and then HDMI, like the typical thing. And so this setup has evolved from kind of like the needs that I mentioned and the mistakes that I made and all this stuff. So okay, let's see. Now is the demo effect, demo time. I'm gonna quit SuperCollider again. And gonna restart it. So the first thing is to start SuperCollider and let it run through whatever setup it does. You see there's a lot of stuff being loaded. These are samples. So in the setup, in SuperCollider, there's a thing called SuperDirt, which is a sampler, which runs samples, and you have synthesizers. So you can either sample stuff and provide your own samples, or you can trigger a synthesizer that generates the sound. So this is kind of the options that you have. SuperCollider always signals that everything is okay when it's green. When it's yellow, it stopped working. I haven't seen it red yet, but there are rumors that it also can show red, but yellow means something is wrong. You have to, and my recommendation is always to restart SuperCollider, like close it. There is some reboot server commands and all this stuff. It doesn't work for me. There's still problems and errors coming up. So what I always do is like I close the application SuperCollider to like completely and start it again and see if it's green. And when it's green, I know it's in a good state. And you also see the output window where you see like errors coming. If it is something wrong, there will be normally a red notice here. And you see, like with my setup, I always have these two open at the beginning. What's also pretty cool if you are rehearsing or doing stuff is the frequency scope. It's also nice to watch, where you can see it in a second. Okay, so we have SuperCollider, SuperDirt, and the synths are running now. And the next thing I'm running is Flock. Flock is something to install. I'm gonna provide the link if you want to later. I'm gonna show you where you find more information later. But Flock is, so I have Flock already installed on my computer. It's JavaScript run server coming with Node.js. And I started with a command. I start the server. I would start the server if it would let me start. Oh, okay. This is the demo effect. Okay, let's. Okay. Yeah, we heard about problems and F-ups a lot, and this is another kind of F-up. Because Flock runs on a thing called Node.js, for the people who do JavaScript, they know it's a server. And because I have multiple versions of Node.js on my computer, at the moment, my Node.js defaults into a version that Flock doesn't understand. So I have to fix that after the workshop. I have to manually tell it to use the other version. This is that. So this is the situation that you don't want to run before a live coding session, but yeah, we do. So here you see now it has done something differently. So it started, and what you do is you paste this URL. So it basically starts a local server for you. And then you paste the URL here. I get an error message at the beginning because it looks for a component that I don't need, and it doesn't find it because I'm offline. So, but this error message doesn't do any harm. So you see I'm offline here. So now I have a browser window which shows me an empty, more or less empty screen, and it says Hydra. From this I can choose, so Flock basically allows you to have multiple people playing music together, and they using different stuff, like Hydra for visuals, Mercury, we will hear about that probably later, tidal cycles and other stuff, Strudel, and people can play together live, but I'm abusing it here for me playing solo in 2 windows and using it completely offline. So it's kind of like appropriation of Flock. So when it starts, I usually want to test things out at the beginning. So I'm going to go through a kind of, like I have a checklist that I'm going through, and this checklist tells me to test Hydra here. So I'm copy pasting that and running it. And okay, so Hydra seems to work. That's fine. So I get visuals, and what I'm doing now is, so we have this minimal kind of icons here. That is a message box where error messages come up, and this is basically the command area. And I say add pane, so I get a second column here. And in the second column, again, I can do the choices here, and I'm using title. So this will enable to play tidal cycles in the browser, and it does it by throwing up a little thing. It says REPLs. I click on this, and it gives me another command line command, which I can copy here. It's quite simple, and I use a different tab on my. So it's important that this is always keeps running, because this is the server running that does all the stuff, communicating with the applications. So I take a second window here, and I paste this into that window, and I do return. And this is normally like, this is the scary part, because it'll take quite some time. It looks, if it can connect online and get like information from the server, it cannot get online. I think it just simply tries a couple of times. But so this will blink, this cursor will blink for 30 seconds or a minute. So you have to be aware if you are restarting it in a live situation, this can take a lot of time. And I'm usually impatient, so I assume it doesn't work, but let's give it some time. And during that time, I can prepare my set. So let's go to a set, and I have the sets here. Like each set has a README, so I know what I need to do or what I'm doing here. And each set has like a title cycles thing. That title cycles thing. That was the second thing I wanted to do. The first thing is it has a visualization thing. And the visualization thing I can copy paste here into the Hydra. And the title cycles thing I'm going to copy paste into the title cycles thing. So now I have these two panes. And in the meantime, something happened here in the terminal. Can take listening function control port. I guess, let's see if it works. So sometimes you just have to. So what happens now is I have time cycles running in the browser, turning to Super Collider. And I have Hydra. And that was it. Thank you very much.